A volcanic island bursting with sun, Sicily is located in the middle of the Mediterranean, as if hanging on to the extremity of the Italian boot. Europe and Africa meet and confront each other on this cross-cultural land. In addition to its cultural wealth, the island combines an amazing diversity of natural beauties. Its numerous origins have left a characteristic cuisine, the distinctive character of its inhabitants, small secret villages, and vestiges of a rich past. In Sicily, all journeys are possible. The patina of history, joviality, warmth, and sensuality endlessly linger on the island and affect each visitor's experience. Palermo, the capital of Sicily, eludes all definitions. This Mediterranean, chaotic, undisciplined city is full of contradictions, yet ever so attractive. At first, one is slightly worried, and getting held up in the crazy traffic at the Via Roma won't dismiss this feeling. However, once you've parked your car, a city full of surprises with unlimited resources unfolds. The Piazza Pretoria is surrounded by impressive churches and monuments, including a fountain adorned with nymphs, tritons, and divinities. Finished in 1573, its statues representing gods of the seas sculpted in their simplest apparel shocked the conservative parishioners of the churches around the square. However, in Palermo, as in all of Sicily, one more paradox won't hurt. The main attraction of the city lies in the personality of its inhabitants. The streets offer constant entertainment. Although they don't reveal their true selves offhand, just like their city, one quickly discovers their warm, Epicurean, and passionate character. Palermo isn't just a matter of monuments, it is an atmosphere, an unsubtle collision of contrast where beautiful churches line dilapidated streets. Palermo loves the confusion of styles. Here, history with a capital H blends with family souvenirs. In the heart of Sicilians, popular culture holds just as an important place as the major works of their inheritance. One should not bypass Palermo. It truly deserves a several-day visit to be discovered. At the end of a narrow street, the songs of the popular Di Teramo theater will know how to seduce you. The more courageous visitors may prefer to walk. It is an excellent way to discover Palermo. As in Eastern countries, the streets have different themes, and given the traffic, the street for bicycles has a promising future. Near the Via Roma, the San Domenico Cathedral was created by architect Andrea Ciresioni in 1640. Its facade was added in 1726. San Domenico is used as a pantheon for several famous Sicilians. In the former heart of Palermo, that has since been rebuilt, the Chiria market is a very lively and noisy place with its numerous vendors selling a multitude of food produce, and the workshops of ancient trades, such as this knife sharpener. At the beginning of the afternoon, Palermo rests. The visitor will mainly remember the screams of children reinventing new games every day. It's time for the sacrosanct nap. Many of the shops and offices will reopen at 4 p.m. The lifestyle in Sicily and its out-of-sort way of seeing things lies at the bottom of its soul. It's also tied to its history. At first an Arab emirate, then the capital of a Norman kingdom, Palermo was the jewel of Europe during the 12th century, prior to a long period of decline. It has preserved unique monuments from its former strategic position between the east and the west. The Normans were ambitious builders who transformed the mosques and palaces built by Muslims before them, and thus gave birth to the Arab Norman style so typical of Sicily. The cathedral recalls visions of the East when seen from certain angles. The Bishop of Palermo, Gautier o Famiglio, launched its construction in 1184. It underwent several transformations. At times, it was for the better, such as the construction of the triple-arch porch of Catalan inspiration. It took 2 centuries to finish it. Inside, the cathedral houses the tombs of famous Sicilian monarchs. In Palermo, puppets have their own museum. It is here that the old popular culture of Pupi, once widespread throughout Sicily, is kept. This form of entertainment was introduced by the Spanish during the 18th century. At the time, it was the only entertainment available to the poor. The main stories of the Dea Pupi opera are the adventures of the heroes of the gestural songs in Charlemagne's Paladin. The loved or hated characters were models that allowed to interpret the experiences of life by setting them in a dazzling universe of glory. Each story had a few episodes that were shown over months in popular neighborhoods. More than 3,000 puppets are kept here with all their costumes and accessories. Many talented artisans made the puppets. In Palermo, Gaetano Greco was the first of a long line of manufacturers. Today, Mimo Guticcio has become the heir of this tradition. I learned to do the voices and to manipulate the puppets from my father. And I taught my son, who just turned 26, the text and movements of the puppets. But together, we inherited this tradition from my father, who in turn learned it from the Greco family. It is as if we were doing the voices and moving the puppets the same way the other men did so at the beginning of the 19th century. The opera Dea Pupi fully belongs to Sicilian folklore. It has survived to this day thanks to the will to keep the tradition alive. This Sicilian theater perpetuates an ancient lesson in perfection. After the agitation of Palermo, a stimulating yet exhausting city, a little break is greatly appreciated. There are numerous sights to be seen around the capital, including small charming villages, seaside resorts, and major historical monuments. 8 kilometers southwest of Palermo, the Monreale Cathedral is a pure jewel of Norman architecture. It confirms the presence of Norman knights in the south of Italian peninsula at the beginning of the 11th century. The young adventurers would offer their sword to serve the highest bidder to the conflicts of opposing the Pope, the Lombardy princes and Byzants to rule over the area. Very clever builders, the Normans used the French Roman art techniques and integrated Byzantine and Arab influences. The Monreale Cathedral, a jewel of this period, should not be bypassed. We are in Cerasa, above Palermo, at 500 meters in altitude. These hillsides, bathing in sun and at times very cool nights, offer ideal conditions for high-quality vineyards to express themselves. Francesco Guccione is the owner of a family hacienda that cultivates ancient vines. Francesco and his brother have decided to replant this one abandoned vineyard with their dynamic organic vine. They attach the vine stalks in the old-fashioned way with a rope. The Guccione brothers refuse to use plastic or wire here. Only the grape variety, the earth, and the know-how will give the wine its taste. In terms of white wine, we cultivate Cathedral. This wine has always been planted here as it best expresses the land to its fullest. As for red wine, we cultivate Neradavola and Pericone, a typical vine of this area that isn't often used. Vines have always been important for the Sicilian economy. For a long time, they were sold to strengthen French vintages. Today, one rediscovers the once fairly unknown Sicilian wines. Climatic conditions and grape variety yield robust and fruity red wines. The white wines benefit from the freshness of the mountains and are generally lighter and drier. In the western part of the island, one discovers the Sicily of yore, austere and harsh, burnt by the sun, and enriched by its multiple historical and cultural inheritances. A Sicily that recalls northern Africa, where the faces seem to be those of Tunisians. Here, the streets belong to the elders. Many young have left for lack of work and opportunity. This migration is a true problem. Every year, approximately 10,000 Sicilians leave the island to try their luck elsewhere. In these Sicilian villages, religion is crucial. In the southern part of the island, the popularity and influence of the church remain particularly strong. Oftentimes, the priest is considered to be the most important person of the village. In the cosmopolitan environment of larger cities, the young generations don't share the same fervor as their elders. However, society as a whole still highly respects religion. Numerous traditions, such as widows wearing black for a year as a sign of mourning, are no longer followed in inland villages. But in these small communities, a secular mixture of superstition and faith continues to rule the lives of the inhabitants. The promontory that spreads from Mount Cofano de Castellammare del Golfo is one of the most beautiful in all of Sicily. For decades, this part of Sicily was neglected. The region was considered uninteresting and isolated, with regular earthquakes and mafia activities. As a result, it has never known the tourism development of Taormina or Syracuse, yet the coast deploys its endless charms. Zingaro is Sicily's largest natural reserve. The rocky coves and beaches are bathed by amazingly clear water. Visitors will discover incredible sights in Sicily. Atop Mount Erice, the city of Erice reminds us of a fortress. In ancient times, Venus, the goddess of fertility, was the object of a major cult. The sacred prostitutes officiate her in her sanctuary. After the sanctuary was totally destroyed by the Normans during the 12th century, a far more austere castle took its place. Among the monuments and churches of this quiet little city, Chiesa Madre is the most interesting. Built in 1314, this church has pretty vaults and side chapels. In 1865, the interior was redone in a neo-Gothic style. Visiting the castle is also truly worth for the panoramic views. To the west, towards the sea, Trapani and its salt marshes. Located in the heart of the powerful trade network that spread from Carthage to Venice, this stretch of land in the shape of a sickle runs along the harbor where Pierre d'Aragon landed in 1282 to launch the Spanish occupation of Sicily. The town owed its prosperity to the production of salt, wine, and laundered mafia money. One is attracted by the outdated aspect of this essentially Arab fishing village. In addition to being a ferry port for the Egadi archipelago and the island of Pantelleria, Trapani is also an excellent departure point to explore the northwestern part of Sicily. At the end of the afternoon, the inhabitants invade the streets downtown for the passeggiata, the evening stroll. The labyrinth of streets of Trapani's historical center has preserved its Moorish character. However, its architecture goes back, for the most part, to the fabulous Spanish Baroque period of the 18th century. There are numerous examples of the Via Garibaldia and the Corso Vittorio Emanuele, the main artery of the city. At its extremity soars the Palazzo Senatorio, adorned with columns and clocks. The 17th century church of the Jesuit school has a beautiful Baroque facade. One of the main characteristics of Sicilian Baroque is the link between totally inseparable architecture and sculpture. The San Lorenzo Cathedral is a typical example of this period. Inside, colorful marbles and extremely sophisticated stucco decorations. During the 17th century, Sicily was blessed by the presence of the Flemish painter Anthony van Dyck. Some have credited him with this painting, The Crucifixion. Religious life has deeply affected the history of Sicily and to this day its inhabitants. Yet life here is not austere. A country where the people party during funerals shows it appreciates the good things in life. Sicily is a major producer of fruit and vegetables to be found in abundance on the markets. The blending of cultures also enriched the island's gastronomy. Oriental flavors spread to the rest of Italy through Sicily. Stuffed vegetables, pistachios, raisins, pine nuts, and almond paste. During the 17th century, Trapani was famous throughout Europe for its coral artisans before the coral banks at sea were decimated. Today, a few artisans have kept this tradition alive. Coral is hard to work with and requires extreme precision. Platinero Lorenza is one of the last goldsmiths to work with coral. The most important aspect is the coral that was set in sacred religious objects such as chalices, monstrances. Through its color, coral was considered to represent the color of Christ's blood. Coral also owes its reputation to a Greek legend. When Perseus killed the Gorgon, he laid its head on the algae. Its blood petrified them and turned into coral. It is used by all Mediterranean civilization and remains a good luck symbol. By heading a few kilometers south of Trapani towards the sea, the visitor arrives at the salt marshes. Traditional tools used to work the salt are on exhibit in an old mill. We are now heading for the southern part of the island, the most rural of all Sicilian coastlines, with rolling fields, traditional villages, and beautiful beaches. One of Italy's most ancient thermal cities, Sciacca was already appreciated by the Phoenicians, the Greeks, and the Romans long before the arrival of the Arabs. With its elegant belvedere overlooking the harbor and its relaxed atmosphere, Sciacca is one of the prettiest cities on the Mediterranean coast. All over the city, be it on the stairs or frescoes in public places, ceramic decorations attract the eyes. The ceramists of Sciacca are among the best in Sicily. Many ceramic shops are to be found in the old artisan neighborhood of the lower part of the city. Giuseppe Stefano exhibits his own creations here for sale. The ceramics of Sciacca have always been here in the sense that this craft was handed down to us by the Greeks. The tradition of ceramics remained up to the Middle Ages. The art of ceramics is highly appreciated by the Italians, from everyday objects richly decorated with floral motifs to decoration pieces. Ceramics also translate the multiple influences that, for centuries, have shaped the exceptional history of this island. Sicily may be an island, yet nothing denotes a feeling of isolation. Set in the middle of the Mediterranean, it was constantly coveted by the major powers of the religion due to its strategic position at the crossing of trade and migration routes. They each left a more or less important imprint here. In the southern part of the island, Agrigento was marked by the presence of the Greeks. Here, the vestiges of 5 temples sit atop a ridge, remnants of the city of Agrigento. It is fascinating to imagine the power of Greece at that time, whose settlement spread to Italy. Found in 581 BC, Agrigento is the last major city that fits into the Sicilian landscape. Further east, we reach Noto, whose ancient history was totally lost in the 1693 earthquake. By destroying all edifices, the earthquake contributed to the development of the Baroque style on the island. Symmetry of space and abundance of decorative elements characterized this style, so suitable to imagination and innovation. The major families were seduced and outdid themselves in building sumptuous palaces. Today, Noto is the most beautiful and harmonious Baroque city of Sicily. On the most refined square of Noto, San Niccolò Cathedral was completely restored following the collapse of its dome. Many buildings were threatened by destruction following decades of neglect and minor earthquakes. Local authorities and the population seem to have understood the seriousness of the problem. Today, you can visit Noto without risking to see a cornice fall. The new city of Noto used a revolutionary idea based on the creation of 2 neighborhoods, one for the political and religious administration, the other residential. The 2 were built with acute symmetry and visual harmony. Located at the southeastern tip of the island, Syracuse was described by Cicerone as the most beautiful city in the world, a rival of Athens in power and prestige. Ortygia, the spiritual and physical heart of Syracuse, is a living museum where all eras, Greek, Norman, Aragonese, and Baroque, blend in the most beautiful harmony. Ortygia is in fact a small island to be reached by the Ponte Nuovo, spanning a charming little harbor. The Venetian palaces with their ochre and rust colors overlook the boats rocked by the sea. Archimedes, the famous Greek scholar, was born here in 287. After studying in Alexandria, he returned to settle in his hometown. The famous principle that carries his name also applies to these amateurs of canoe basketball. They are lucky to enjoy their activity in an exceptional setting. Despite its Baroque varnish, Syracuse is truly Greek in essence. It is prevalent in the great civility of its population as well as in the hidden architectural vestiges. Centuries of negligence have certainly erased the prestigious image of Ortygia's beauty, but for the past few years, the city's authorities have tried to remedy the situation. The extraordinary history of Sicily and its resulting deep cultural blending are the root of many contradictions inherent to the island and its inhabitants. The conservative spirit, the tendency to be suspicious and stoic, emerge at times, yet signs of confidence, sociability, sensitivity, as well as a great sense of humor are also present. In Syracuse, the magnificent Greek theater carved in the hillside white rock is a classical architectural masterpiece. 15,000 spectators could attend the representations of plays by Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. Every summer, the theater becomes alive again with the showing of antic tragedies. But it is difficult to imagine the intensity of representations in those days. During the celebration of Dionysus, the god of drunkenness and wine, the plays held the spectators from dawn to dusk. At the height of the spectacle, the crowd would enter a trance, feeling what Aristotle called catharsis. The spectators were made to laugh for a few hours more prior to sending them home. In Sicily, you can also find pleasure in your plate. To convince yourself, just go to the market. With its rich gastronomic tradition, Homer located in Sicily the gardens of Alcinous, whose abundance enchanted Ulysses. The profusion of fresh vegetables and the many fish of this part of the Mediterranean are the basis of a cuisine developed by the Arabs during the 12th century, associating spicy, sweet, and sweet and sour flavors. Cheese also belongs to the journey throughout the senses. They are the same as in southern Italy: provolone, caciocavallo, or ricotta. Sicily is also a marvelous orchard for Mediterranean fruit. For a long time, Sicilian cuisine was considered the cuisine of the poor. In this context, texture and freshness were most important. Fish with bright eyes, shining scales, and well-colored gills, and the luster of eggplants and fragrance of tomatoes predict a delightful association. Herbs also intensify the taste. One of them has remained unavoidable: oregano. In our culinary tradition, oregano and branches was offered to newlyweds and persons that were dear to you as a symbol of good luck and good fortune. They would hang it in the kitchen because it was pretty, smelled so good, and brought luck. When needed, they would use it. It was better since it was drier and held longer. Catania is as black as the lava it was built with. It is Sicily's second city in terms of trade and a prosperous business center. The Piazza del Duomo is a sumptuous example of Baroque style so typical of Catania, with its contrast between lava and limestone. In its center rises an elephant from the Roman period. It is the emblem of the city, said to have the power to appease the wrath of the Etna. On the other side, the cathedral dedicated to St. Agatha has an imposing two-story high marble facade. Its columns belong to the Roman amphitheater. This monument watches over the relics of the saint patron of the city. Via Etna is the major artery of the city and runs along the vestiges of a Roman amphitheater. During the 2nd century BC, it was the largest amphitheater after the Colosseum in Rome and could hold 16,000 spectators. The Ionian coast is the most sought-after destination for tourists in Sicily. Several swimming sites spread to the north of Catania. Cerasa is a legendary site. The 3 basalt rocks that soar from the water are said to have been thrown here by Polypheme, the Cyclop blinded by Ulysses for having tried to stop him in his flight. A few kilometers further, Aci Castello is also famous among swim and sun lovers. Its lava beach is not very welcoming. In the summer, wooden platforms are installed to lay in the sun more comfortably. The small town has a fairly remarkable castle that overlooks the city, perched on a basalt monticule. It was built by the Byzantines during the 7th century on the foundations of a Roman fortress. Under Arab occupation, the castle was destroyed, then rebuilt by Caliph Al-Mu'z in 909. The Normans conquered it during the 11th century and imposed a feudal regime. Agrigento completes the trilogy of the Aci. The village has a magnificent setting on the Ionian coast. The atmosphere is elegant. The people of Catania like coming here to stroll near the Baroque monuments or enjoy the sulfurous thermal waters. Be it the basilica or the cathedral, Agrigento has several religious edifices that are, as all over the province of Catania, predominantly in the Baroque style, the major architectural style of Sicily. It summarizes all that is to be found on the island. The Etna remains one of the fascinating sights of Sicily. To climb, you must use a road that goes through a birch forest in a fairly calm landscape. But as you get closer, this impression radically changes. For a very long time, Piano Provenzano was the main ski resort of the Etna, but during the eruptions of 2001 and 2002, a giant flow of lava destroyed everything. Towards the top, you can see how the lava crushed the trees. Since 1987, this extraordinary volcano and its flanks belong to a natural park. The diversity of the landscapes is breathtaking, from alpine forest to lava deserts. The highest peak of Sicily, the Etna, is the largest active volcano in Europe and one of the most active in the world. Its 3,323-meter high peak dominates the entire Ionian coast. Its fumaroles of smoke offer a breathtaking and at times terrifying view. In antiquity, the summit of the Etna was often lit up by the spectacular pyrotechnical effects. Many works attribute these eruptions to Typhoon, the monster struck down by Zeus and buried under the Etna. Other ancient authors believe it is Vulcan's workshop. History has listed numerous eruptions. The eruption of 1699 lasted 122 days and destroyed 16 settlements in the area. It also covered most of Catania. In 2001, the most spectacular eruptions of the past 40 years caused extensive damage to the infrastructures located on the southern flank of the mountain. Spectacularly located on a rock terrace of Mount Tauro, in the shape of a balcony over the sea, Taormina is the most prestigious seaside resort of Sicily, and no superlative is too good to describe its exceptional charm and beauty. For centuries, the city has triggered the passion of generations of writers, artists, aristocrats, bankers, and monarchs. Due to its wealth, it did not have to endure the harsh economic realities of other Sicilian cities. Its splendor is by no means an exaggeration. Capital of Byzantine Sicily during the 9th century, Taormina's medieval city is almost intact. One of the main pleasures is to stroll through its narrow streets admiring the artisan and antique shops. In this labyrinth of streets, you can see the locals meeting to play cards. The game of scopa is very popular here. Away from the crowds, the luxuriant Parco Duce di Cesario, commonly known as the Villa Comunale, is one of the most beautiful public gardens of Sicily. The view of the bay is extraordinary. It was created by Lady Florence Trevelyan Cacciola, an Englishwoman disgraced after her affair with Edward VII. Near the cape, the tiny Isola Bella gives onto a sublime cove. Laurence Trevelyan bought this island for the modic sum of 5,000 liras and had a house built there. Today, a natural reserve, the island belongs to the World Wildlife Fund. Its waters are a paradise for divers. Today, Taormina is the symbol of luxury tourism in Sicily. The coves around the city deserve their reputation. Their difficult access protect them from the tumultuous nearby seaside resort. Leaving Taormina, the village of Castelmola has a more authentic color. The traditional music in Sicily is handed down orally. While eating a pizza, you can listen to the I Bedi group, one of this music's airs. La fame scompariu e la si disinniu quando era te, principetto che guardia quando era te, ciao passo in tala mia quando era te, scordo tutta Ave Maria quando era te, mi si spola fantasia. Leaving the Ionian coast behind, we head to the north of the island. On the Tyrrhenian coast, we embark upon a hydrofoil for the Aeolian Islands. Volcano is no doubt the most visited island of the archipelago. With its warm water source and its therapeutic mud baths, this island is very much appreciated by the Italian jet set. Despite the unpleasant smell of the sulfurous gases, the baths are very popular. For the Greeks, the island of Vulcan must have inspired respect, or even fear. The volcanic activity of the island was a source of curiosity for many thinkers. During the Middle Ages, the Christians believed it was the antechamber of hell. The lunar landscapes of lacy volcanic rocks and sulfur fields are covered with multicolored flowers during the spring. A sea of amazing cobalt blue, wild mountains brushed by the wind and splashed with flower spots, fuming volcanoes. This suffices to explain the fascination of the Aeolian Islands. They are 7 in all, a magic number. All volcanic, yet different in size, shape, and atmosphere. They are at times surrounded by islet dust. We're in Lipari, the capital of the Aeolian Islands. Due to its central position, it is a practical base to hop from island to island. The citadel splits the Gulf in 2 bays. Each has its own harbor, Marina Lunga for the ferries, and Marina Corta for the fishermen. Lipari was first inhabited approximately 6,000 years ago. For the Greeks, it was a harbor of commerce located on their trade route between the Aegean and Tyrrhenian seas. During the summer, the jet set and movie stars arrive in flocks to swim in the crystalline waters, stroll and celebrate. The population doubles and prices soar. In the fall, the islands recover their authentic facette. And once again, peace and the age-old rhythm return to the 15,000 inhabitants. Fish is plentiful in the waters of the archipelago. The pleasure of fishing is enjoyed very early. Tuna, mullet, sole, or cuttlefish caught in the morning are found on the restaurant tables in the evening. Gourmets will not be disappointed. In good pastry shops, they will find a tempting selection of Sicilian pastries, including cannoli or amarettos. In Lipari, there are restaurants for all tastes. Some are to be found in very lively locations, others are true harbors of peace. But do not worry for your taste buds. From the simple pizza to the savorous Aeolian cuisine, the offer is extensive. The old city at the foot of the citadel has a small, delicious maze of streets lined with pastel-colored houses. As in the French singer Nino Ferrer's song, laundry hangs at the window to dry, and it is pretty. Speaking of Nino, it is the same name as of this 80-year-old fisherman who is cleaning the famous Nassa shrimp. These are shrimp. They are very good. They are caught with a dragging net. They are very tasty and full of life. Yet the quietness of Lipari hides an agitated past. The citadel was built to protect the harbor from the repeated attacks of pirates eager to grab the revenues drawn from the exploitation of obsidian and pumice stone. To enter the citadel, you must climb a few steps towards the Bartolomeo Cathedral. It was built in the 17th century to replace the original Norman cathedral destroyed by the frightful pirate Barbarossa. Pushing toward the interior of the island, another facet of Sicily unfolds. Nature in these regions is more than advantageous to cultures, especially due to the fertile volcanic land and almost omnipresent sunshine. We are in Tusa, a village near Cefalu. Antonio continues to cultivate his vegetables in the old-fashioned way while watching his sheep with one eye, barely perturbed by the firecrackers that ring from atop the village for a religious celebration. The tradition in this region was to build towards the top of the hills and then to descend towards the sea, where we discover Castel di Tusa. Just below the town lays the ruins of the castle after which the place is named. East of Cefalo, we are facing one of the most beautiful beaches on the Tyrrhenian coast. They are clean, spared by pollution, with relatively few people. Sicily is a world turned towards the sea. The population is mainly built up on the fertile coastal plains. This is mainly due to the importance of maritime trade throughout its history. However, you should not bypass the interior of the island that shows another facet of Sicily. An isolated and mountainous region, the center of Sicily has a unique atmosphere and marvelous landscapes. The mountains are strewn with small villages and farms. Today, the marvelous nature has not changed, and neither have the hard living conditions. The backcountry of the northern coast has 2 huge national parks punctuated by tiny mountain villages. The high pastures have always welcomed rural communities of cow and sheep breeding farms. During the summer, you can still see shepherds leading their flocks and herds to higher altitudes to find zones of pasture. As in the far past, they live in small, dry stone constructions. These shepherds continue to follow ancestral recipes to make a marvelous and very creamy ricotta appreciated by the locals. There's no chance you will find these cheeses in a supermarket. You must make the trip here to share for a few hours the life of these men who preserve part of Sicily's memory. Under the beams, the provolas, or cow cheeses, are refined. The shepherd gives 4 strokes to help the ricotta surface from the bottom of the giant pot. The skim milk escapes from the small strainers. It is called the duma. It becomes acidy. You then mix it with warm water and it becomes like a paste flowing. You then work it by hand to obtain this shape. Impressed by the almost supernatural beauty of the place, Ovid declared that here nature takes on all of its colors. The countryside bursts in bloom during the spring. The wheat fields brushed by the wind are also an image of Sicily. Pasta is said to have been invented here, but some believe that their origin is far more ancient, the Chinese. Very well preserved, these huge fortifications of Enna are the perfect illustration of the withdrawn mountain villages that preserve their own identity. The castle was built by the Saracens, then fortified by the Normans. Wrapped in myths, the city of Enna dominated the center of the island and was for a long time the sanctuary of the cult Demeter, the goddess of fertility and agriculture. Our journey resumes on the northern coast. Stuck between a huge rock and the water, Cefalù is an ancient medieval fishing port that is unique in Sicily. A marvelous charm emanates from this old town whose wealthy residences reflect previous prosperity. The Cathedral of Cefalù is the last jewel of the Arab-Norman crown. By building this church during the 12th century, Roger II wanted to curb the growing influence of the papacy in Sicily. This fortress-like cathedral was restored. Since 1015, it was ridden of all additions that had accumulated throughout the centuries. The architects had the courage to remove the marble and woodwork, allowing the original stone to appear. Erected above the city, the Rocco was the perfect hiding place for the giants who, according to the legend, were the first inhabitants of Sicily. The Arabs are said to have had their citadel built here. With this spectacular setting, as well as the narrow streets that spread throughout the city, Cefalù has become a favorite place for movie directors, such as Giuseppe Tornatore, who filmed Cinema Paradiso here. Cefalù is also well known for its beautiful fine sand beach, considered rightfully so as one of the most beautiful beaches of Sicily. For some time, Cefalù felt somewhat inferior to Taormina. Today, however, every year the two resorts attract many tourists. Probably already inhabited during prehistoric times, Cefalù hosted several civilizations, especially the Arabs, themselves evicted by the Normans. To this day, it has preserved this cosmopolitan facet. As a matter of fact, the city is well known abroad for the quality of its Italian language classes attended by many foreigners. Our journey ends here on the banks of the largest island of the Mediterranean. Unique in character, Sicily is well worth a detour and always will be. For the Arabs, it was paradise on earth. The famous medieval poet Ibn Hamdis described it as an island wrapped in the coat of a peacock with sumptuously colored feathers. And he was so right.